Welcome to Verses and Visions Creative Conversations, where creativity and purpose meet to inspire and uplift. I'm Cassidy Beck, your host, here to explore the stories of artists, dreamers, and changemakers who are walking in faith and using their unique gifts to make a difference. Each episode is a reminder that your vision, paired with God's purpose, can transform the world around you. Let's get started and spark some inspiration together. Hey friends, before we jump into today's conversation, I've been thinking about those small, meaningful things that bring us together. For me, that's often sharing a bottle from my family's premium soda company, Soda Beers. Whether it's crisp ginger beer, smooth butterscotch beer, classic root beer, original apple beer, or apple beer 5, our low-calorie twist, each flavor is a small little reminder of home and of the simple joys. Okay, now let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to the Verses and Visions Creative Conversations. Every guest brings something meaningful to the space, but my next conversation was one of those rare moments where the insights just kept flowing. So rather than rush it, we've decided to share this one in 2 parts. I'm so excited for you to hear about it. Today's part 1, let's get into it. I get the chance and opportunity to be able to speak with Alisha Coakley and Scott Brandley. Alisha and Scott are co-creators of Latter-day Lights. I've had a chance to listen to their podcast. It is extraordinary. Scott's also released a book that I am so excited to talk about and hear more about what started their journey. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
I would love to hear a quote, a song, something that is inspiring you right now.
I actually have a quote I really love, and it's been my favorite for years. It's by an author and speaker, Andy Andrews. Worry is imagination used in unproductive ways. I really love that because there's always something to worry about, and I can gear my thinking to pause that worry and instead be creative in figuring out ways to solve a problem that I'm worried about or to get through a problem. If there's no way around it, I have to go through it. Let's use my brain power to come up with something creative. I think that'd be mine.
I love that. I feel like I have suffered so much through things that never happened, but in my imagination, they were grand and it was awful. But
Yes.
needlessly, like I suffered totally needlessly. And I love that quote. That's a good one. Thank you for sharing. What about you, Scott?
I'm turning 50 tomorrow, and
Happy birthday.
I saw something that was really interesting. I was watching a podcast, and this guy had a thing on his wall, and it said, "My life in weeks." It had this chart of 90 years in weeks, and so many of them were filled up, and the rest were blank. I went online and I found that chart and I put my birthday in there. I have one white square at the end of this big, huge black thing because I'm turning 50. So that's going to turn black tomorrow. And then there was 4 empty, like 40 years past that. And it made me realize how important the time we have is. And we don't know when that time is going to end. But to see your life on a chart and see the weeks you've used up and how many you have left, it really has been giving me a different perspective on life and what I want to do with the rest of what I have.
I love that. I also feel it's a little bit sobering to see a visual like that, yet empowering because this is a gift that we have. What are you going to do to enhance that gift? I'm curious, have you noticed a difference in the way that you go about your day?
So I've been trying to figure that out because I want to make sure my life counts. I want to make some kind of a difference in this world. And I think we all do. But we get caught up in the whirlwind, and it's just hard to really focus on what's the most important thing. So I think what I'm going to try to do over the next little bit of time is figure out what is the most important thing to me and what can I do to make the most of what I have.
That's awesome. I think that's incredible. You were asking yourself, what's the most important thing? I'm curious, what first sparked this idea for you to do this work?
My daughter, Clarissa, was just getting off her mission in Sacramento, California. Alisha and I used to be in the same ward together when I was a bishop. She moved into the ward, and we became fast friends because she and I have similar personalities. We're go-getters, and we really like to just get stuff done. She came to one of the first meetings when she was in the ward, and we were trying to get volunteers for something, and Alicia's, I'll do it. She, she was like super gung-ho and ready to help out, which was a breath of fresh air. And we just became friends. Clarissa went into Young Women's, and Alisha was one of her leaders. They hit it off. When we went to get Clarissa from her mission, Alisha had moved to Elko, Nevada, halfway between here and Sacramento, California. And we're like, hey, we should meet up and go have breakfast together. And as we were at breakfast, we started talking. Alisha and I started talking, and I told her I was writing a book and about faith. And then Alicia's, I'm writing a book too. And so we start talking. I'm going to this conference, this LDS Publishing and Media conference, the LDS PMA, and you should come with me. And I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. So we signed up to go to this conference. Right before we left, she got COVID. I went by myself, and I don't know if you've ever been to a conference by yourself, but it's not the funnest thing. It's always better to go with people. I went to lunch one day, and I sat at a table by myself, feeling bad for myself a little bit, but then this girl came and sat by me, and we started talking. She wrote a book called Early Homecoming, and it was about her experience when she went on a mission, got sick, and had to come home, and how she dealt with that. And she realized that there were other missionaries that had that same concern. And so we're sitting there talking, and I asked her, I'm like, how did you get the message out about your book? And she said, I started a podcast. And so that was interesting to me. I'd never met somebody that actually had hosted a podcast before. And so we had a good conversation about it. On my way home, I had this idea. Every member of the church has a story to share, but they really don't get the opportunity to tell that story outside of their family and their ward, if they tell it in a sacrament meeting talk or something. And I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a podcast that members of the church could just go on and share stories of hope and inspiration and faith? As soon as I said it in my mind, I'm like, somebody should really do that. And then I'm like, oh crap, that somebody is me. So, so I'm like, okay, I get it. I don't know how to do this, but I think I'm supposed to start a podcast. The first person that came into my mind was Alisha, because I'm pretty boring and the fun one. So I called her, hey, Alisha, I've got this idea. What do you think? Do you want to be a part of it? And she's like, heck yeah. You can maybe tell your side from there, Alisha.
Yeah, it was funny because I'd never thought of doing a podcast either. Totally comfortable talking to people. I've always been really comfortable talking to people. And I think I genuinely love peopling, if that makes sense. Like I really love to get to know others and get to hear their stories. And for as long as I can remember, anyone that I've met up with, regardless of how long we've known each other or what we're talking about, people tend to share and overshare sometimes with me. Like they feel super comfortable telling me everything. And so I was super excited about this idea because those are my favorite types of like sacrament meetings as lessons, is when people get personal and they talk about how the gospel is impactful to them because of something they went through in their life, good, bad, or otherwise. That speaks more to me and my testimony than anything else. Reading the scriptures is really hard for me to get the full impact out of. It's like other people's experiences is the thing that helps me to understand the scriptures. At the same time that he brought this up as reading Saints, and I just thought, oh my gosh, like all these like little light bulbs started going off my head. And I was like, first of all, here is a collection of exactly what Scott's thinking needs to be shared, right? It was so important for the pioneers to share their personal experiences, not just, the details of the trek, but like how that made them feel and what they went through and where their testimony, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I thought about the scriptures in general. And I was like, the scriptures is literally just a collection of story people sharing their personal experiences that built their faith in some way, shape, or form, right? Like the good, bad, and the ugly. I thought, this is a great idea. I was super excited, didn't know anything about technology stuff other than I could hit live and go on Facebook Live. That was the extent. So I thought partnering up with Scott's going to be great. I love talking, learning about people, being able to connect one another. And Scott's got the know-how and he is on time. So there will be one responsible party. And when Scott says that I'm the fun one, I'm also the one that probably will end up landing us in jail at some point because of my good ideas. But it'll be okay because we'll get the best cell. We'll have the greatest relationship with our guards. It'll be the cushy experience. But I'm probably going to get us in trouble. I like to push the envelope a little too much sometimes. But yeah, I just thought it was going to be a great thing. And man, I was nervous those first few episodes and it was so much work. But now it's just second nature. It was completely inspired. But when Scott brought up the idea 3 years ago of this podcast, I had no idea just how much it would change my life, just how much my testimony would grow and shape in a way that I never thought was possible. Some of my favorite podcasts have been from members of the church who aren't even active, or maybe not even actual members, like people who have been excommunicated from the church, the ones who were apostates, or the ones who like had adulterous relationship, like the people who went through stuff, the ones who went to jail, the ones who, it's so interesting to me to see how much my testimony has grown because of the things that they've shared, that they've been willing to be open about. And I made some great friends along the way too. I still talk to so many of our guests on the regular. It's become this beautiful, huge piece of my life that I really love.
That's incredible. It definitely resonates with me. I love our fast and testimony meeting because I'm trying to do the best I can living the gospel in my life. And I'm very familiar what that looks like. And I love when people will share what they're doing and what that looks like for them. Broken heart and a contrite spirit. So what hardships have you overcome and how have you seen the gospel in your life? And those questions that you are answering as you're going through your podcast, I am here for it. I really like it. You know how much I love sharing stories that inspire faith and hope. I'm excited to tell you about my new children's book, Sheep Chronicles Baptism, releasing September 1st. It's about Joshua, a curious boy with big questions about baptism, and the parable of a lost sheep named Shannon, shared by his wise grandpa. It's been such a joy to write this story, and I can't wait for you and your family to read it together. Scott, let's talk about your book.
Okay. Awesome. So it's called Faith to Stay. That's a cool picture of Christ reaching out through a storm. I don't know if you can see that, but the idea of the picture is that Christ is always there for us. And if we're not holding Christ's hand, it's because we let go of it. He's always there with his hand extended. You just talked about trials of faith that we've gone through. The purpose of this book was actually, the way it started was I actually had a trial of faith when I was a bishop. And I had a family leave the church back in 2014. The church had just come out with a set of essays to try to get everything out from the past and address every point of doctrine that people weren't super familiar with or that there were potentially issues with in the past. They were really helpful, but when you read them all in one shot, it's a lot to take in at once, especially right when they first came out. So this couple had read these essays and it had created a lot of questions for them. They came into my office and basically said they were leaving the church because of some of these things. I went home and I read them all in one night. And it was a lot to take in. And then I'm trying to find answers for this couple. And it really had an impact on me at the time. So I went on this journey to try to rekindle my faith. It's really weird because I thought my testimony was super strong. And then all at once, I just hit a brick wall. For about a week, I was going through this trial of my faith. And I didn't feel like I could really share with anyone because I was the bishop I I didn't know how serious it was. I was in this limbo state, but I felt a lot of pressure to figure this out. As a member of the church, your life is built around your testimony, the gospel, the teachings you learn, and your social life is built around it. Every decision you make in your life is built around it. And to lose all of that would be devastating. I prayed a lot that week. I went on a lot of walks. I finally got some inspiration and I felt inspired to break down my faith into its most basic elements. I came up with 5 things that I needed to really deep dive into and break the house apart and put it back together. And if everything came back together, then I was good. And so that's what I did. And the first thing that I did was I asked myself, is God real? Like I went to the most basic level that I could think of at the time. And I'm like, okay, I know all about God and, the gospel. And if God's not real, what's the alternative? Is basically the question I asked myself. And the answer to me was evolution. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm going all in, I might as well just see what's on the other side. And so I did this huge deep dive into evolution and I tried to find anything I could find to disprove that God wasn't real. And at the end of the day, I couldn't find anything. I actually found some really cool insights into evolution and God. And so I disproved it and I'm like, okay, that's a solid piece. I can put that back. And then the next piece was, is Jesus Christ the Savior of the world? I put some thought into that and that piece was easier. Once I knew God was real, Christ is an easy block to put back in. Ultimately, there were 5 that I went through. It was, is God real? Is Jesus Christ the Savior? Is Joseph Smith a prophet? Is the church true? And then is the Book of Mormon true? At the end of that process, I felt really confident in my testimony and my faith, and I was able to go on. So that was a long intro to my book, essentially. I kept going for another year or two, and then I was on a walk one day, and I got this inspiration out of nowhere, and it said, I feel like it was God telling me, hey, you need to write a book about your experience, and it needs to be on faith. And here's the 10 chapters that I want you to write about. And that all came to me within about 5 minutes. And I
Wow.
knew exactly what the book was supposed to be about. I knew all the chapters. I went home. Then I started writing. It took me 9 years to actually write the book. So I just finished this year. So it's been a fun journey.
That's incredible. A lot of time in our journey, it's very faith based and it needs to be. I also think how neat is it that you added academics as well and that you were like proving God. And I think that God, as a creator, he can meet the challenge, whatever it is. If it's a faith crisis, if it's a question, God can meet the challenge. And I think the approach, what an inspired approach you used. So you said there's 10 chapters. Did you base each question you have, did you split the chapter into 2 or how'd you format it?
Yeah, so the first half of the book is the answer to those questions. I found a talk by Elder Lawrence E. Corbridge called Stand Forever. And it is an incredible talk. And it talks about the premise of the talk is primary and secondary questions. He says there's 2 types of questions you can ask about the gospel, primary questions and secondary questions. The primary questions in his talk are 4 of the 5 questions I had this faith crisis. And the 5th, so it was the 4 that he talked about in his talk: is God real? Is Jesus Christ the Savior? Is Joseph Smith a prophet? And is the church true? I just added the Book of Mormon one. And so I actually implement that talk into my book as well because it's so powerful. The way he explains it is if you can get a testimony of the primary questions of the gospel, then all the secondary questions pale in significance. The problem today is, especially with the internet, we're inundated with secondary questions. These can be anything related to the gospel that aren't those main things, right? It could be like polygamy or church history, any of the prophets and things that they said, or fringe ideas and things that people might have that can throw you off, and you start to go down those rabbit holes. The problem is that with the internet, you don't know where that real answer is coming from. There's people online that have different motives. You weren't there back 200 years ago when something happened. So you're basing it off maybe a few documents or third party opinions or ideas that happened so long ago. You don't know the full story. And so if you go down those secondary question rabbit holes, you can lose your testimony. And I'm sure you've seen that happen to people you know. Lawrence Corbett really put it in a way that made a lot of sense to me. I wish I would have known that several years before when that family was leaving, because I would have been able to explain that to them in a better way. I put it in my book because I wanted to help people that hopefully read it in the future.
When I read Scott's book, that was one of the things I thought, the way that he wrote it is so easy to understand, yet he has so many complex ideas to what he's saying about the secondary questions being the thing that pulls people out, because usually that's what it is. Usually it's not those primary questions. People, for the most part, either do or don't believe that God is real. And from there, they start getting stuck on all the less significant things. A lot of times, what I've seen personally with some of my friends who have left the church has been they throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like they get so stuck on something that happened in the past or something that was said, or even something that's currently being taught or is culturally accepted in the church, that they feel like because that one thing's not answered or answered in a way that they agree with, they have to throw everything else away. And I love that the way that Scott wrote his book, it gives you permission to give yourself a little bit of grace and being like, I don't have to agree with every single concept in order to know that the gospel is true. I can look at these core things and know that if I can build a testimony of these core questions, it really anchors you. It roots you in the gospel in a way that the other stuff doesn't jade you so much. You can disagree with some things and you can still have your membership in the church be just as valid, and you can still find a place for you. And I think that especially in this day and age, like there's so much information out there. Like Scott was saying, you can Google anything. You can go to ChatGPT and you don't know what's right and what's wrong being presented in a different light. There are going to be things that are icky when you look at church history, because Heavenly Father only has imperfect people to work with. Just like in the scriptures, right? Let's look at David. Not the best person in the world, yet still highly favored of the Lord and one of his favorites, and someone who has done a lot of good in his life and still had a testimony. It just lets some pressure off of your shoulders while also giving you this whole new perspective from the scientific part of it. Like when Scott goes and he talks about all the little details, for example, the distance that we are from the sun and how perfect everything had to line up in order for us to even be existing here on this planet and for this planet to be survivable, and like how many different things had to go right for us to exist. It makes you think, okay, I'm dumb if I think there's not a God. And not to be rude, but it just doesn't commonly make sense, right? Anyway, it's a really good book.
Thanks, Alisha.
That's where we'll pause for now, but trust me, there's more goodness ahead. In part 2, we go even deeper into the bold, faith-led choices and wisdom gained along the way. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. If you're looking for a family-friendly, refreshing drink, check out Soda Bears, my family's premium soda company. And for a faith-filled story to share with the little ones, don't miss Sheep Chronicles Baptism, coming this September. Both are available on Amazon. Until next time, keep creating with purpose and faith.